provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines on First at 9. Hopes of a new chapter. President Maithripala Sirisena arrives in New York ahead of his address at the 73rd United Nations General Assembly. Who financed LTTE? World Sri Lankan Association questions UNHRC's accountability.
While seeking accountability from the Sri Lankan forces, why hasn't UNHRC commenced a single investigation on those who finance LTTE activities?
The new fad. Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, insists human rights isn't a new phenomenon for Sri Lankans. Return of the unidentified gunman. 2 persons shot dead in separate incidents. Eager for change. Extraordinary high voter turnout recorded in the highly criticized Maldives presidential election. A very good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Derana 24/7, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chan. Now moving on to our top story tonight. President Maithripala Sirisena, who left for the United States last night to participate in the 73rd United Nations General Assembly, landed in New York this evening. He is due to address the General Assembly next Tuesday. This will be his 4th consecutive annual address to the world body. President Maithripala Sirisena arrived in New York this morning to attend the 73rd United Nations General Assembly. The assembly will be held under the theme Making the United Nations Relevant to All People, Global Leadership and Shared Responsibilities for Peaceful, Equitable and Sustainable Societies. Tomorrow, the head of state will be one of the keynote speakers at the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit on the sidelines of the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly. The summit is scheduled to adopt the Nelson Mandela Political Declaration in commemoration of the late South African president. The president will also take part in a special session to discuss issues pertaining to the drug menace. On the 25th of this month, President Maithripala Sirisena is expected to address the 73rd United Nations General Assembly for the 4th consecutive time. According to the President's Media Division, the head of state is expected to present a set of proposals to UNHRC to find sustainable peace, reconciliation and communal harmony and outline the government's plans to tackle the remaining issues listed in the UNHRC proposals, and he will explain this to the world leaders at the United Nations. The World Sri Lankan Association insists the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is seeking accountability from the Sri Lankan forces on war crimes, to conduct an investigation on the unknown entities who financed the terror group LTTE. They made this remark in response to allegations levelled against the Sri Lankan military by the LTTE sympathisers in a session parallel to the UNHRC session yesterday.
Several fractions expressed their views over the human rights violations in Sri Lanka at a session held parallel to the UNHRC session yesterday.
Tamils live under the occupation of the genocidal Sri Lankan armed forces. 16 of the 19 divisions of the Sri Lankan army are in the north and the east. There were 170,000 members of the military at the end of the armed conflict in 2009. A year later, it went up to 200,000 and the next year it was up to 300,000. The ratio of soldiers to the civilians in the north and east is 1:5. In Vavuniya it is 1:3 and Mullaitivu it is 1:2. The armed forces have gone into non-military commercial activities. They are engaged in large-scale property development, construction projects and business ventures such as travel agencies, holiday resorts, restaurants and innumerable cafes in the north and east. The Tamil people are unable to exist since agriculture and fishing are not possible. This land grab will permanently change the demography of the Tamil homelands and make the Tamil people destitute in their own homeland. Sri Lankan armed forces must immediately release all civilian lands. The government of Sri Lanka should immediately demilitarize the north and allow the civilians to lead a normal life. As justice, reconciliation and accountability have not been achieved by Sri Lanka, the High Commissioner must immediately refer Sri Lanka to the ICC through the Security Council. Thank you.
I am here as one of the mothers of the disappeared from across the north, east of Sri Lanka, who have been protesting for 580 days, demanding the whereabouts of our disappeared loved ones. I am waiting for my son A. Anuraj, who was surrendered to the Sri Lanka Armed Forces at the Omanda checkpost after the final war in May 2009. After the end of the war, all those who had surrendered and handed over to the army by their relatives have now been made to disappear.
The World Sri Lankan Association responded to the allegations levelled against the Sri Lanka security forces over human rights violations.
By eliminating the LTTE, the Sri Lankan forces had protected the human rights of all Sri Lankans. That is why in 2009, the Human Rights Council passed a resolution welcoming the conclusion of hostility in Sri Lanka. While the resolution recommends setting up officers for missing person and repression, the focus on the last perhaps of the value, disregarding the fact that thousands of innocent civilians have died in the hands of LTT terrorists since mid-80s. Why such a double standards? While seeking accountability from the Sri Lankan forces, why hasn't UNHRC commenced a single investigation on those who finance LTT activities? The LTT's international fundraising network is still large and custodians of the funds are freely roaming the corridors of UNHRC.
Archbishop of Colombo's Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith accuses the international community of falsely accusing Sri Lanka for human rights violations when the people of the country have lived a religious lifestyle for centuries. The Archbishop of Colombo was addressing the Mass at the St. Matthew's Church in Ekala today.
Human rights have become the new religion of the West as if it's a new discovery. But people in our country have been following religions for centuries. We know we have a short lifespan, longest being around 100 years. So, if we get used to this ideology of living a materialistic lifestyle, we'll end our lives in an unfortunate manner at the end. There is no need to talk about protecting any of these human rights if we follow our religions properly because they take us beyond any of these ideas. It is those who are not following any religion talk about all these human rights issues. We shouldn't get entangled in this spell and must act intelligently.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa says that the incapacity and the lack of proper planning of the present government has put the people in distress. The former president made these comments at a function held at the Sri Pushparama temple in Galle yesterday.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa unveiled the pinnacle of a renovated stupa at the Sri Pushparama temple at Maduwana in Galle yesterday.
Today, the people of this country are in distress. The unemployment has increased and development has stalled. Banks are facing a tough time. We have arrived at an era where people have to hide their hunger and live by just 2 meals a day. They have created this situation within 3 years. They accuse me for this situation and blame the loans I took for the country. But not at all. I paid the first tranche of the loan I took to build the port. We had an income from the Ports Authority and we built the port and the airport since we were capable of paying those. They are deceiving the public and the world by blaming the port and the airport. They took loans as well, but I haven't seen anything they've built from those loans.
Meanwhile, the former president also participated at a religious event held at the Sri Swarnabimbarama temple in Galle last evening. The president also responded to journalists following the event.
If there is a criminal gang active in these parts of the country, will they wait for permission from the hierarchy to suppress them? Why is the North being treated in a different way? The law should not differ from North to South. That is why the police exist and they can seek help from the army if required.
UPF MP Kumara Belgama says that former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is eligible to contest in the upcoming presidential election. He expressed these views to media at an event held in Kalutara today.
I am against nepotism. If someone from the Rajapaksa family is contesting, I would like it to be Mahinda Rajapaksa. The people support and accept his leadership. You mentioned a certain name. How can he contest in the presidential election when he holds a US citizenship? He cannot. Therefore, there is no point in talking about it any further. Yes, he can. Who says he cannot? If Mahinda Rajapaksa hands over his nomination, the election commissioner cannot reject it. After he wins, anyone can submit a petition and challenge it. That is a different story. However, by the time it is taken up for debate, it would be too late because by then he would be the president of the country.
බොරුවට කියන්න බෑ. තව හරියට දෙන්න මාස 14ක්.
Upon a court order, the voice recordings which revealed the alleged plot to assassinate President Maithripala Sirisena and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa have been handed over to the government analysts for further investigations. These recordings contain a phone conversation between the former Director of Terrorism Investigation Division, DIG Nalaka De Silva, and Director of Anti-Corruption Force, Namal Kumara. Meanwhile, convener of the National Alliance for Lawyers Associations, attorney at law Manoj Gamage, criticised the lack of legal action taken against the DIG on the matter.
None of the conspirators have been arrested so far. We can't ask the police to do it because it is one of them who's done this. The only action that has been taken is giving mandatory leave for the DIG. If Namal Kumara is lying, then he should be arrested, and if not, the DIG must be arrested. An investigation report into the voice recordings which proves the plot to kill the president has still not been compiled. Not even the Presidential Secretariat has issued a proper statement on the matter yet. Then this should be some sort of an act. And shouldn't they be investigating whether a sniper rifle had actually been lost and who's stolen it? The public have the right to know all of this. In a backdrop where a plot to assassinate the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa has been revealed, the government has not even bothered to give him proper security even after his request. If something happens to their lives, the government must bear the responsibility.
Two individuals died in shooting incidents reported during the day today. One of the incidents took place in Tangol and the other took place in Hikkadua. A businessman who was a resident in Netalpitiya in Tangol was shot dead by two unidentified persons this morning at a vehicle service station in Tangol. The victim was also attacked by suspects with a sharp object following the shooting. The victim succumbed to his injuries after being admitted to the Tangol Base Hospital. Officers attached to the Tangol police station are currently conducting further investigations into the incident. Meanwhile, in a separate incident, a 37-year-old male was shot dead opposite the Hikkadua post office this afternoon. Preliminary investigations showed that the victim was shot dead by an unidentified person who arrived on a bicycle. According to the police, the victim succumbed to his injuries at a base hospital in Balapitiya. Further investigations are being carried out by the officers attached to the Hikkadua police station.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
A high-powered investment delegation led by Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama left for Germany this morning. The delegation will visit Frankfurt, Hamburg and Berlin, where they are expected to meet with the senior German officials as well as leaders in the business community of the German industry. The Sri Lankan delegation includes senior officials from the Board of Investment, Export Development Board as well as senior officials of the Ministry of Development Strategies and International Trade. On other business news, the government expects the construction expenditure in the coming 5 years to reach 400 to 600 billion rupees, if not more. Addressing the award ceremony dubbed Construct held in Colombo recently, Minister of Megapolis and Western Development, Partly Champika Ranawaka, also delivered a caution coupled with the expected rise in expenditure in the construction sector. He said that according to data of the ministry, the industry will face a shortfall of around 10,000 or more skilled workers in the future.
Quality buildings are essential ingredients for a growing and dynamic megapolis, which is under implementation right now. We expect that the annual overall construction expenditure in Port, Central Business District and administrative capital around Sri Jawaharlal in the coming 5 years will reach rupees 400 to 600 billion or more, reflecting continuous strong building and infrastructure projects for construction services. However, we are facing a number of challenges that might undermine our capability to cater for such demand, notably shortage of labour and an aging workforce. Though there is no latest manpower forecast released by the relevant authorities of Sri Lanka, we, MMWD, presume the industry will face a shortfall around 10,000 or more skilled workers in in labour-intensive trades. Moreover, the average age of our construction workforce is 40, with about 40% of the skilled workers already aged 50 or above. The overall labour force in Sri Lanka will start to dwindle after 2022, making it even more difficult to recruit construction workers.
Analysts expect uncertainty in market activity in the Colombo boost over the course of the week. With that, let's now take a look at how your market will perform in the upcoming week. Sri Rangan Achudan from First Capital Holdings.
Market was on a sluggish downtrend during the past week. Following in the forex market, rupee has tumbled more than 9% YTD, hitting a new all-time low about 169 rupees. We expect uncertainty to prevail during the upcoming week as well, with the index likely to be stagnant in the short term. Despite uncertainty leaving most of the investor wait-and-see approach, I expect some early movers coming to the market interest. Foreign selling pressure that prevailing in the market will slowly get absorbed, improving confidence level of the market.
A tense presidential election is currently being held in Maldives, which is regarded as a test for democracy in the popular Indian Ocean archipelago. The election is heavily criticized and will closely be monitored by the international community, especially by India and China. Former and exiled Maldivian President Mohammad Nasheed, who is barred from contesting in the election, warned on Friday that this will be a heavily rigged presidential election.
Polling for the Maldivian presidential election opened at 8 a.m. local time in the Maldives as well as in Sri Lanka and Malaysia. Today's vote pits President Abdullah Yameen, who has presided over a wide-ranging crackdown on dissent, against opposition figure and long-time Member of Parliament Ibrahim Mohammed Soli. The government has denied entry to foreign election monitors and journalists. More than 250,000 people out of a population of nearly 350,000 are eligible to vote in the island nation, which has been in turmoil since its first democratically elected leader, Mohammad Nasheed, was forced out of office in 2012. Yameen, who assumed power in 2013 after a disputed election, has jailed or forced into exile nearly all of his political rivals, banned protests, suspended parliament, and declared 2 states of emergencies in just 5 years. Holding a special media briefing in Colombo, former and exiled Maldivian President Mohammad Nasheed, who is barred from contesting, warned that this will be a rigged election.
Throughout his term in office, President Yameen has dismantled the constitution in his attempts to fashion a strongman authoritarian rule. We also believe that the Chinese government has an interest to maintain the authoritarian rule of President Yameen.
Faced with widespread international criticism, President Abdullah Yameen has fostered closer ties with China and Saudi Arabia, which have funded the country's infrastructure boom. His opponent Ibrahim Mohammed Soli, meanwhile, is seen as leaning towards India and the West. The European Union and US have voiced concerns about the election while threatening to impose targeted sanctions if the democratic situation does not improve. Results are expected by midnight today.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. The chairman of the Selections Committee of Sri Lanka Cricket, Graham Labroy, has been blamed by the media for acting as a referee for the Sri Lanka-India Women's Tournament held in Sri Lanka, while the Asia Cup is being held in the UAE. Given the fact that it is paramount for the chairman of the Selections Committee to be present during the match, he has been blamed for neglecting his responsibilities during the Asia Cup. Labroy today, however, moved to respond to these accusations.
When Sri Lanka Cricket contacted me to be the chief selector, I told them, look, I have the responsibilities with the ICC as a match referee, and that I'll like to continue with it. But they repeatedly approached me, and then what I did, I got clearance from ICC. So what ICC wanted to know is whether I would be a selector for the women's teams as well, and I said no, as the women's would be managed by a different committee, and that I would be selecting only the men's. If you may remember, I put my hand up when most of the others ran away from this task, and Sri Lanka Cricket was really struggling to find appropriate selectors to do. So that's how I managed to do the selector's job, at the same time to be an ICC match referee.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
A very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Forecast First. Starting off with your temperatures for tomorrow that will vary between 20 and 31 degrees Celsius with the highest of 31 expected in Mullaitivu and Batticaloa. Well, when looking at the map, a low pressure zone will develop in the western province and will gradually spread throughout the island. Well, moving on to your rain forecast for tomorrow, most parts of the upper region of the island including Jaffna, Manna, Vaunia and Anuradhapura will experience showers with thunder activity also expected. Well, it's no difference in the lower region of the island as most parts will experience thunder showers. That's all from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your city by city forecast.
On a programming note, our weekly entertainment program Showbiz Tonight, hosted by Mahesh Johnny, will not be telecasted tonight as usual after first at 9. Instead, the Sri Lankan of the Year Awards ceremony, which recognizes the best of Sri Lanka, will air right after the news, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Showbiz Tonight will return next week. However, tomorrow at 6:55 p.m, Showbiz Tonight will host a special program on the 70th Annual Primetime Emmy Awards. Make sure you join in for that as well. And before we go tonight, we'd like to take you to China's Shandong province, where streets and avenues are lit up with lanterns to celebrate the traditional Mid-Autumn Festival, which falls tomorrow. We hope you enjoy these visuals and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.